Welcome everyone to Think Fast, where we don't talk slow, but we think fast. Hello, welcome to Think Fast. I don't know why I'm talking like this. Okay, this is your weekly podcast and everything that's coming up in the world of startup brands, business, marketing. I throw random tech stuff in between and try to make everything connected to the creator economy. Suchita, what do you do on this show?
I basically crack the funnier jokes, number one.
That's true.
Second, I am also like the alpha nerd and I bring all the data and the research to think fast. But Varun, what has happened in the past week, man? Aren't you like done with this year? Don't you just want to shut down
I've
and
already
move
shut down.
on?
I've already like I'm in 2024 mindset, not in 2022 mindset anymore. I think that 2022 is so like yesterday. I don't know. I'm watching some weird content. I feel I'm just having weird accents coming out. But what have you been watching this? What have you obsessed over?
So I think a lot, as mentioned in the first episode, I am still glued to this Theranos thingamajig that's going on, and Elizabeth Holmes and everything that she's been up to. I've also been binging a lot on television shows. Sex
Hmm.
and the City's reboot, and just like that launched yesterday. Don't ask me where I got the episode from, but I saw the first two episodes, which were really something else. But basically, like pop culture and television aside, I also checked out Gaurav Munjal's epic conversation with Shailinder Singh, which I would
Hmm.
highly
Hmm.
recommend to those of you who are obsessed with all things productivity. What about you, VD? What have you been watching?
I saw bits and pieces of that one, but what I've really been kind of like soaking in is, Adam Newman did this conversation. Adam Newman, anyways, is very like, what is the term? Yoga Babble founder. In that sense, just like makes everything seem so like his thing.
Delirious.
I- you know, First public appearance after what since the entire madness that happened around WeWork, but I honestly thought it's one of them. It's like a case study in how you can manage narrative, or at least try to manage narrative. Try to seem like if you hear his tone, if you hear just how he was talking about everything, there is zero emotion there, but it doesn't seem like he's lifeless. I don't know how
But
well
didn't
he
he come
practiced
across
that.
as delusional? I mean, just the way, the flippant
He,
way with which he just totally like out of it.
but it was very flat. The thing is that he didn't seem as bad as he could have seemed if he showed even a little bit of emotion. Um, which is what I kind of took from that. I'm like, one second, if you have to come in from where he's coming from, there is no way you're coming out of it with a positive. I don't think had too much negatives on this one, which is what I've been like. I'm like, how did he talk? Like, I've been actually mapping out how he spoke, and it's a weird thing to kind of map out, but I'm just been looking at that and obsessing over how he speaks.
I think the genius of that interview was, at least I, after watching it, and Andrew Sorkin is an expert interviewer, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But I left watching it feeling like there is a lot that happened behind the scenes that none of us were privy
mm,
to, which I think was the genius of the interview, where
yeah,
he made
yeah,
you like second guess ki actually boss hua kya tha, and how much
correct.
information do we have access to,
Yeah.
and how much of it is actually just all smoke and mirrors. But
Yeah.
genius, delusional Adam Newman, ladies and gentlemen.
And I have to tell you, the most exciting thing of this last week is Casey Neistat launched his filmmaking course. Okay. Now, for anybody who does not know Casey Neistat, OG vlogger, he invented filmmaking on YouTube. Like everybody who wanted to vlog online has at some point in time referenced Casey Neistat. He'd made a couple of videos in the past talking about how he vlogs and how you can learn from it. I've watched each of those videos like about 50, 60 times. And now he has a filmmaking course, which I obviously signed up for because I'm a sucker for signing up for courses. But I mean, this is like gold standard. Like nobody's better than him at. He basically he did a film a day as his daily vlog for I think 4 to 5 years.
A
And
film
he
a day.
consistently, yeah, which is basically one vlog a day. Uh,
Yeah.
was it 4 years or 5 years? I don't remember, but it was something like that. It was a long period of time.
Good on Casey. I don't know who he is, so thanks for educating me on yet another creator.
Yes, yes, lots there. I have lots more talk. I can talk about Casey for an entire episode, but I will not do that. And I'm going to hand this over to you to say what.
To say there is a break, guys. We will take a quick, short break and then be back with the funnest segment, which is our Think Fast segment, where Varun and I will ask each other quick questions and get quick responses, hopefully, quick responses this time around.
And in case you guys don't come back, you better come back because we have a great guest. We have a guest this episode, so we have a guest coming up down
Yes.
the line. So
Ooh,
don't miss on that one.
surprise.
So it's break time. Time for advertising to come in. Welcome back to Think Fast, where we're going to do the Think Fast segment. There is still no better way to log into this segment by saying Think Fast twice, but we will do that anyway. So this is where we ask each other like one-liners, and we hopefully will answer back in at least two-liners or answer back in a tweet and not an essay. Are you ready, Suchita? Are you ready for this week's Think
Are
Fast
you
questions?
ready, Varun, to not make your question an answer? That is the
My
real
questions are always
question.
an answer. I have too much context built into my question. So here is question number one. There's a recent tweet that came out about the top 10 songs in Apple Music in the last 1 year, and it basically shows that in India the top 10 were all Punjabi independent tracks, except for one which was Badshah's Jugnu, but Badshah's anyway largely also Punjabi music in that sense. Even the Bollywood tracks in that were independent Punjabi songs that were taken into movies. What's your take on that?
I mean, what else could you possibly expect? I think Punjabi music is like the rap hip hop, in the Indian context, and I think just the amount of talent that's coming out, whether it's Indian or international, it's just I'm a sucker for a good Punjabi song. Let me ask you, Varun, what's like your epic, number one Punjabi song of all time?
All time is still Sukhbir. You cannot not go to that one OG
Fair, fair,
track.
fair,
And
fair.
but recent year it's been a cross between Jugnu and Bijli, which are my
Jesus,
two tracks of the year. But going now,
Jesus.
your question, your turn to ask
Oh
me a
yes,
question.
my
See, I
question,
was
my
that
question.
was quick.
Congratulations, Varun. Okay, we're getting better at this. Okay, Varun, question for you. CXXO, Sequoia Spark, and female founder focus funds. What is your take on these?
Um, on one side, it's great that it's happening and you're finally seeing a clear focus on, because I mean I know globally they keep talking about having that middle-aged white man founder and kind of moving away from that. You're kind of having diversity kind of built in, focus a lot more on on gender and diversity. It's happening here as well, and it's a great thing to see. I do want to see the fund sizes equal all other fund sizes eventually. I think
Yeah,
that's really where we should get to, and I'm hoping that will happen soon. But yeah, all thumbs for this one. Up, rather.
leveling the playing field.
Yes. There would be no glass ceiling if we did not build the glass ceiling in.
Oh God, Varun, just ask me your question, please. Jesus.
Okay. This question will have some context
You are
built in.
such a
So,
dad. I just want to say you are such a papaji. I swear, you have like papaji, like you like
but I'm a
who's
Papaji.
40-year-old papaji. That's my
Yes.
point. Okay, sorry.
I'm an almost
Question.
40-year-old
Your
Papaji.
question.
But okay, so there's a phone that came out called the Fairphone 4. The Fairphone has had multiple versions before because this is number 4. Why it's different from all other phones? Because you've spoken about e-waste a lot across the world. The Fairphone is entirely sustainable. All parts can be taken out and replaced by the people who buy them. And I know you are like, I don't give a fuck about the new phone, but this is like a phone you can buy. You can just literally replace battery, replace camera, all that stuff, and never have to buy an actual again phone again. So what's your perspective on that?
All that's cool, but how much does it cost? Because for me, that's
It's
basically
cheaper.
what it comes down to. It's
It's cheaper than
cheaper.
most flagship phone. Yeah, it's cheaper than most flagship phones.
And does it like work and can it not be hacked in by MBS or whoever else is there out there?
I guess some testing will take. It's an Android phone, so I'm guessing that's
Hmm.
more up to Android than the Google than them. But it's still
I,
some
I I
testing to be
think
done.
it's I mean definitely all things sustainability blah blah bullshit have definitely taken I mean not that sustainability is bullshit just before someone jumps to that conclusion but uh, but generally that that
The
general
term is
theme
blah
has
blah, not bullshit bullshit. I'm just like putting it out there.
no but like all things green renewable recyclable climate change etc has obviously been a trend for all the right reasons and it's great to see technology like this come up. I don't know, I think with phones no one quite does it like Apple, right? So I feel like until Apple doesn't make this a trend, Fairphone
Yeah.
can keep doing their thing, but up
I
until
can actually get
Apple
into
doesn't
how
make it a
Apple
trend.
has become better at this. Their carbon footprint has
But
gone
let's
down.
not
I
get
can.
into that because I have a question for you,
That's an
sir. And
episode.
that question
Yeah.
for you, sir, is BuzzFeed sad SPAC.
So I don't think it's unexpected for BuzzFeed's SPAC to be. sad because at the end of the day, I still don't know what BuzzFeed does anymore. There was a time when BuzzFeed was a thing. I think the digital media side of things has kind of changed, but I feel BuzzFeed is a little lost. I think I take BuzzFeed, take Vice, some of them, I think they're a little lost in terms of what they represent right now. So I'm not surprised, but it's still sad. I mean, they're one of the originals who kind of
Oh,
built this
geez.
entire thing out. Right? Yeah. So it is sad, but it was expected.
Sadly, I cannot disagree with you. Fall from
Yeah.
grace, man. Fall from grace. Remember when like they were like the
Listicles
Mavericks?
were a thing. Which Friends character
Yeah.
are you?
Which Harry Potter house do you belong to? And then they had
I think
Tasty.
Ravenclaw. No, I think I'm Hufflepuff. I don't. I have to do that again. I have to find that one now. Now that you've said it, I have
Yeah,
to find out. What were you?
we'll open that quiz out. No, but like they did so much, and I think sorry to like extrapolate on this, but they were one of the OGs of content to commerce even. So
Yeah, yeah,
that YouTube channel that they had, Tasty, they actually
yeah.
did a collaboration with I'm forgetting either Target or one of these guys, where they launched a set of like utensils and crockery which tied in with Tasty's value proposition. So much potential, but so much lost with a couple of the experiments gone
Yeah, yeah,
down the drain. But I'm going to stop talking. You have a question for me?
yes. My question to you is, what are you excited about when it comes to 2022?
Oh man, what am I not excited about with respect to 2022? I just hope it doesn't turn out to be a 2021, because I'm
Hmm.
frankly pretty fucking done with this year.
Yeah,
But I don't know, man. I think in the startup context, I'm excited about how all of these narratives really start coming together. I'm excited about Web3 and the shape and size that it takes, specifically in the Indian context. Now that you're seeing the likes of Sequoia, pick it up, take it
yeah.
more seriously. But just generally, I'm so fucking done with this year. So 2022, whatever you do, just be fucking kind to all of us, because it's been 365 arduous days. What about you? 2022, are you going to go back to the Maldives?
No, I really want to do a few. I think I get slapped if I go back to the Maldives again. But no, I've lots of trips. I hope to go to Peppa Pig Land in 2022, which is what we're looking forward to in
What
this
is
house.
Peppa Pig Land? Like
You know,
Metaverse?
you do not know Peppa Pig, the animated
Peppa
character.
Pig.
Yes,
Oh,
there's a
Peppa
Peppa Pig
Pig.
land
See?
in the UK. So
Papa Ji
we
Varun
all
is back, guys. Papa Ji
Papaji
Varun
Varun
is
is
back.
back. What am I excited about beyond that? I'm excited for. I'm also worried and excited for this movie called RRR to come out, which is Rajamouli's next movie after Bahubali. I saw the trailer. I am worried, but I'm also excited. But yes, that's what I'm looking forward to. But more seriously, I'm just looking forward to. There's some really interesting things happening in the creator economy space. Bombay launches the first creator house in India is coming up in Bombay, which I'm super excited to kind of go to, because a creator house where creators can get together. It's a space for them. Seeing a lot of action happening there, and I'm one of the like I said, the Papaji creators in the mid in between all the younger ones. So it's a lot
Veteran.
more fun for me as well. Yes, I'm the old
Varun is a
person there.
veteran. Wow.
A veteran.
No, but sorry.
By the way, I have to just say this. I was called a veteran in an email that was sent to me a couple of days ago. And I tweeted out saying I was called the veteran of an industry, and I don't know how to feel about that. I still don't know how to feel about that. I was called a
Yes,
veteran.
Uncle Ji Namaste was my
Yes.
super quick response.
I saw
By
that.
the way, a quick fact, and you're going to judge me for this because I am so like out of everything. But I have never seen Bahubali. Sorry,
That's okay. I don't think that's a
that's
problem.
okay.
I think, yeah, I'm okay. To be honest, my only thing was I'd never judge anyone for not having seen a movie because, and I don't know if I'll get into trouble for this. Karishma Kapoor never saw Andaz Apna Apna. We did a shoot with her once, and she told our director, poor guy, wore a Crime Master Gogo T-shirt, and he thought she'll
Hmm.
find it cool, and she said, I never saw it actually." So imagine
Was she in
that.
the movie? Sorry, I haven't seen the movie either. Oh
That I will
no.
judge you on that you haven't seen Andaz Apna Apna, but I will, so that we don't
Okay,
segue
guys.
into the movies we have not
Today,
watched.
yes, today I will watch Andaz Apna Apna. But before we get into more TV shows, I want to move into our short segment section. So, what are we discussing today, Varun? What are the three topics we're covering?
We're talking about Zepto. I this whole like 10 minute, 5 minute, half a
Quick
second
commerce.
commerce. I don't know where it'll end. It'll be like, okay, you think it and it'll be in your like lap commerce is what it'll eventually be. So we're talking about that. Ronnie Scovala invested into 21K, which is the the whole edutech one for schools and everything from kindergarten to 12th standard. And we're also digging into this whole VC scene. There's a great article out on Better Capital, which I think is a thing to get into. This is me thinking while I'm talking, which is why I sound suddenly like I've digressed from that. But I'm going to let you kick this one off.
Awesome. So, ladies and gents, the first thing we're going to be talking about is Zepto. Zepto is what is one of the very many 10-minute grocery delivery apps that has launched by a bunch of us, by two, three. Correct me, dear
Do you know
producer,
why it's
what
called
the exact
Zepto, by
number
the
is.
way? Do you
Why
know
is it
why
called
what
Zepto?
Zepto means? I
No.
actually checked this. Zepto is 10 to the power of minus 21 as a maths piece, which means it's 0.000 something, whatever, like one, which is what the founders thought was cool. And that's why they called it Zepto.
Of course they
I
did. They
think,
are Stanford dropouts. Those are the kind
yes.
of things I would assume Stanford kids found cool. But in any case, this space is heating up. Everyone from
Yeah.
Swiggy to Zomato via Grofers, and even Big Basket to some extent. Everyone's really thinking through what they play within the 10 or the quick delivery or quick commerce as it's popularly called. I actually, because I care so much about you, dear listeners, I actually spoke with a bunch of my friends who've either been in this space or have run companies and raised multiple $1 million within this space, just to understand it better. Because I think when you think of quick commerce and when you think of delivery, the at least my first reaction was so much money is going to get pissed away into this.
Mm.
What the hell is even the point, right? And does quick commerce really matter in a country like India, where kirana stores or general trade have the amount of footprint that they really do? But in my conversations, I think a lot of what came up was, don't dismiss quick commerce only as oh, 10 minutes, haha, hee hee, hoo hoo, does it really matter? I think the amount of infrastructure and strength that will really take to build something significant in quick commerce is not trivial. It's not a joke. It's also interestingly something that cannot very easily be done by existing players. So if I had to sort of backtrack a little bit for people who aren't very familiar, typically the models, there's two types of models that exist, right? One is your marketplace models. So for example, Swiggy, Zomato are all three-sided marketplaces. You have your customer, you have your restaurant or cloud kitchen, and you have your delivery guy, right? And then essentially the technology is, how do you minimize the amount of time in between the three parts of this marketplace: the customer placing an order, the restaurant making that order, and the delivery guy successfully picking it up and obviously delivering it to the customer. Your second model, which is what you've seen the likes of obviously Big Basket do a kick-ass job of, is your warehousing model, right? Which is a whole other beast. You had guys like Big Basket, Milk Basket, and many others that had come up in this space. I don't know if you remember companies like Pepper Tap and Local Banya back in 2016.
Yeah.
They had
Yeah.
also sort of toyed around with this. How do we make commerce? How do we basically make the grocery and the FMCG buying experience for customers simpler? What makes quick commerce extremely interesting is, unlike the Big Baskets of the world or the Zomato Swiggies of the world, what they are really creating is a network of your, what cloud kitchens are, but in the
Mm.
context of
Dark
FMCG
stores, right?
products, right? Yeah, dark stores. So, um, really creating this like massive network of warehouses. So for example, for a 60-minute delivery experience, you may need to have warehouses in every 5 to 10 kilometers, but for your 10-minute delivery experience, you literally need to have the execution capability of setting up warehouses every 1 to 2 kilometers, because that's the efficiency that you need to really deliver this instant experience to customers in time. So just the mechanics of this business, because I remember when quick commerce had first come to light, I was all like, why can't Swiggy or Zomato get into it? But through these conversations, what came out was, it's not just about warehousing. It's about how deep you go into warehousing, that really really matters. So I think that's one. I think the second thing that makes quick commerce extremely interesting is, unlike the US, right? Because in the US there are a bunch of these quick commerce players that have come up. There's a company called Joker. There's 1520. A bunch of these guys have raised a shit ton of money from GGV and a few other folks, a few other very well respected funds. in the US, they're kind of, tapering down. But I think the other really interesting thing in the US versus India comparison is, in the US, because obviously per capita income is significantly higher, purchase power of, customers is higher. You see customers making bulk purchases, right? So your, American customer will go to a Costco and they'll buy like toilet paper for a year, and then they'll
Mm.
come back. A year is an exaggeration, listeners, you get the
No,
point.
no, they do buy for a
But
year.
but in the Indian context, right, your impulse purchase is actually your general trade purchase, right? Your
Mm.
impulse purchase is you going to your general trade store and quickly picking something out that has that you've run out of at home. And just the mechanics of making this impulse purchase happen, right? Just the technology and the logistics that will require is something truly different to what has currently been built amongst existing competitors. And I think the third thing is FMCG is a whole other beast unto itself, right? Being able to replenish inventory, being able to manage inventory. I mean, imagine managing thousands and thousands of square foot of products, ensuring theft, expiry. Just the complexity of it is a whole other beast. So I think with quick commerce, there's this very unique opportunity to take on general trade. And again, I can keep going on and on about the
Mm.
copious notes that I got from my friends. But what about you? Were you like me, where you dismissed it immediately, but then once you learned a bit more about the space, started scratching your head saying, "Bhai, isme kuch hai."
So here's my bigger question, right? And this is actually a question from two ends. One end is that I still am a doubter in terms of why everything has to be within 10 minutes. To be honest, not everything. And most times, and I know that this is almost a Kirana store versus this model, but I'm like, how is this better than the Kirana store model? Because in many ways, um, if I were, let's say, a company like Reliance, who I feel is someone who could actually easily do this, is to aggregate all the Kirana stores across areas and say, make them Reliance branded or Geo brand, whichever one, and make them your both, they can actually be their center. So you're not managing inventory as much, and you still have the stores doing it, but you can kind of map it all out, right? Which is where the other question comes in. How does this make business sense in the long term? Because they're doing a few neighborhoods now, just the amount of inventory you have to hold in each dark store, just to be able to replenish that. How will this make money, and kind of as it scales out is a big question, right? And I keep going back to, in my head it will make more sense for medicines than it would make sense for, because in medicines I think we need it instantly, right? And the other ways I think the reflex will still for many people be to call that kirana store, because you have a um, relationship with that person, and I might be totally wrong, but I don't know if that will kind of go away entirely because of this. But I'm more a skeptic on the business model, to be honest, than on, as a consumer I'll be happy to get something in 10 minutes.
So
But and a
I
Dunzo
was
does that to
thinking.
me in many ways.
Yeah, so I was thinking of exactly that point, but actually, pick up and drop, right, which is your
Mm.
Swiggy, Zomato, Dunzo model, that's actually
Yeah.
very inefficient when it comes to your general trade model. So, for example,
Mm.
the just the cost efficiency of having a runner, right, who is
Mm.
or like a rider who is roaming somewhere on the streets, having
Yeah.
them go to a kirana store, pick the product up, and deliver it to you is obviously a more inefficient experience, not just for the delivery guy but even for the customer, than just taking something from a dark store and then delivering it to the
Yeah.
customer as soon as you can. And
Yeah.
even for and again, I think the world of general trade, because it's something that you and I don't think about because it's so omnipresent in the Indian context. uh, Consolidating that and creating some amount of like a uniform, so really what quick commerce is doing, and I'm processing as I speak, but really the thing that quick commerce is doing is they are disrupting general trade. They're saying that
Mm.
you don't
True.
need to order from your kirana store anymore, because the supply of a kirana store is never infinite, right? There are
Mm.
limitations. You usually end up finding more or less the same type of products across different kirana stores. So really through this, you have an opportunity to deepen into the kind of SKUs that you can have. The second is it's a more efficient experience, not just from like a cost perspective but just logically speaking, right? It's more efficient to service. So for example, like if I live in defense colony, it's easier to service all of defense colony through one warehouse than have multiple riders going to six kirana stores in different defense colony
Fair.
kirana store areas and then delivering it to each of these individual houses. And I think the third thing is it going back to the point that you made, right? And totally valid criticism, which is, this will this make business sense? I mean, food delivery is just about figuring out the unit economics of their business. Will something like this actually come together in unique and interesting ways? And I think this is where like the magic of throwing a lot of money into a problem comes in, right? I remember
Mm.
when food delivery had just launched. Remember, we had the same criticism. Or when Ola and Uber
Mm.
just launched, we had the same
Yeah.
criticism, which is, who gives a shit about getting a cab in like 5 minutes, or like who cares about restaurants being able to deliver to my house in like 30 minutes. But I
Yeah.
feel like this is one of those categories where if you give the option to the customer, there is a use case of the customer wanting to. It'll take a lot of money, it'll be a bloodbath. I'm sure similar to how Swiggy and Zomato became the two players, this will also see players sort of limiting themselves. But given the entrenchment of general trade, and also given that fact that I'd mentioned you, which is Indians not buying stuff in bulk but wanting to top up their cart, as in it's basically a very replenishing mindset, as opposed to
Mm.
stocking up and being very like planned and methodical about things.
Yeah.
This just takes the burden out of planning. But how
I'm
things
still a
shape up,
skeptic though. I'm still a skeptic.
I mean, we'll find out when we find out. But I think it'll come
Yeah.
down to what is the total amount of money going into this segment over
Exactly.
a longer period of time, and does it really change habits for customers?
That is so true. I still will call the Kirana store. That's going to be me. I'm gonna be like, hello, chips ka packet hai kya? Sorry. Before we get into that, speaking of stuff which maybe does it work, does it not work, or should it even work? Ronnie Scubala invested into this company called 21K, which basically is a platform which does everything from kindergarten to K-12, which is like 12th standard, entirely digital in terms of how schools can function. They're saying it will obviously enhance how school happens right now, democratize this entire piece of saying, okay, you could be anywhere in the country, you can still get access to the same kind of education. It's entirely online though, so the students never meet each other. It's entirely done that way. He's putting 5 million into this. And yeah, I don't, if you ask me, I have many feelings about this. Before I talk about my feelings, which are a lot of feelings, I want to get your perspective on the fact that you're going to have 3 to 18-year-olds literally doing their entire school life online and not really meeting up physically. Lots of
Yeah.
emotions, but I'm going to let you come in first.
See, you're the parent out of the both of us, and you obviously like children more than I do, evidently. But I
By the way,
mean,
I'll
keeping.
tell you this: their curriculum includes not just computational thinking, but coding, yoga, dance, music. Yes, I
I
have
just want to.
so many feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like the delight of school was the ability to be in a physical environment where it's not just you, but it is others, and it is about you figuring out social cues, social skills, your own ability to communicate, through like words, body language, whatever else. But for me, my schooling experience really came down to my interactions with my peers, my interactions with my teachers. And I think one thing that we really need to stop assuming is that an average Indian lives in like a sprawling 4 BHK, right?
Yeah,
And
and has
and
great
I,
data.
Exactly, and has great connectivity and this, that, and the other. So, I think solving for access to education, I still get like solving for access to more and more people, having whatever like access to tutors, teachers, etc. I still get that, but I mean, recreating the experience for a kid who could just very well, I don't know, this, yeah, this specifically doesn't make too much sense to me. But again, you're the parent over here. You're the one who'll have to potentially deal with a kid dancing, doing yoga in your house.
Hmm.
What's your take, man? Especially after seeing what COVID does to a kid.
So, so I've been through this for the last year and almost like close to 2 years now, right? So Leia's done nursery and now a large part of her lower kindergarten off an iPad, and so there. here's how here's the problem with online education in general is that it's still it's not an unbundled format. Like, there's stuff you want to learn which you can do online, which you can kind of need to break out and say, okay, this you can do by yourself, right? So self-learning is a thing now. You talk to anyone who's like a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, which I talk to many of them, because they're all saying, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to go to college? Why can't I just learn to be a YouTuber or learn to code or just like talk about, get into crypto and everything else, right? You have that happening a lot. That's because we've said, okay, initially it was an industrial system of doing education where like we go into class 9 to 5, you're there, you have homework, you all learn the same thing in the same exact way. Digital can change that, and it in some cases it is, which is the good part. The bad part is physical schools, like you said, builds community, right? It brings you to, like, I've made my best friends in life through school, college, just people who I've met. And I feel that that's something you will totally lose if you don't do that. And it also affects how your social skills are, like how are kids going to like talk to each other, how are they going to be able to and so some things to be learned, you need to do it together in person. So this whole model of saying it's more efficient because it's only digital doesn't work at all. um, Hypothetically, you need to have a hybrid where there need to be certain things that you have to do together. But again, it's about access versus just generally giving the whole experience. And I feel it still needs to be together. I feel that a large part of school, especially early years, I think maybe post like sixth, seventh standard, you could still do a large part of it digitally. But I think it's me a scale of saying largely in person when you start off. Over time, just unbundle the stuff that can be only digital, and eventually maybe just do a full digital when you come to college, which I think can in many ways be like one hangout every month and just like go do stuff on your own. So like I said, lots of emotions primarily from like the fact that I'm seeing someone whose first experience with school has been online, and to see a 4-year-old get excited when you drive her past a physical school and say that's where you could go,
Yeah.
shows that that's the emotion you want to meet. Like she's when I don't know how were you ever excited to say, oh yeah, I'm going to school like for classes? No, right? She's
Yeah.
excited to go to school to go to classes. So I'm like, that tells me something.
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
my rant is
absolutely.
over.
And I think there's something about that serendipity, right? In my
Mm.
opinion, the best learning actually happens through serendipity. It's not necessarily in like course material, but the best learning happens in a conversation like this, right? Where you end up exchanging an idea, finding, something that you hadn't necessarily thought of, top to bottom before. Just a quick question and a clarification. This has nothing to do with 21K. Like I said, I don't track the edtech space enough. But are they pitching it as an alternative to school or like as a supplement to school? You know what I mean?
So they're saying basically that this can make schools more competitive with what is required today. But
Hmm.
in most cases, it can totally kind of take over and make it entirely digital. So if you could have your kid let's say your kid, you are in a city or a town where you don't can't give them access to a certain quality of education, you can still have that by logging into this. Which brings up also questions of how you're going to manage if the school says, okay, some people are physical, some people are digital only.
Yeah.
How do you make that experience not substandard for the people on digital?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of questions which haven't been answered. It's easier for schools to do one entire thing, but thank you. Our producer just pointed out the article says that they're an alternative to schools, is what they say. So, but I feel that schools might use it for specific cases, but I'm all for unbundling and doing this mixture and breaking that up. But it's not an alternative
I
school
just
for sure.
yeah, I want to add something over here, right? I I went to grade school, and the director of the school, Arun Kapoor, is someone who I really look up to vis-a-vis the way he thinks of education and the way he thinks of curriculums. I'm waiting for an edtech or ed whatever the hell company to really rethink what a curriculum looks like. I think the biggest challenge right now with existing ways in which curriculums are taught to kids is curriculums are designed only in the context of academia, and there's very little that is given to a kid, even in terms of whether it's things that they're measured on, etc., which is outside of the scope of academia. So for example, if you had to ask an average kid, right, how was school for you, or what is your quote unquote ROI on school, the ROI on school is measured by the percentage that you got in your board exams or whatever, I went to CBSE school. So literally the ROI is what was my percentage on a board exam. But there's so much more to what curriculums can be outside of just what percentage did I get in my board exam, and therefore, what college was I able to go to. So someone needs to really create an ecosystem which disrupts the job to be done of a school, because unfortunately right now the only job being given to a school is, take care of my kids, which is in my
Yeah.
opinion a massive job. In fact, the thing that I was going to add is, who is bearing the brunt of, handling this kid while it's at home? It's
Exactly.
unfortunately
Who's going to
always
take
a
care of them? The
mom's.
most important part. Like,
And if you look at any
and
lockdown data, who suffered the most? It was working moms who had to, either
yeah,
quit their
I
jobs or
agree.
move more into part-time models because of,
Yeah.
constraints and constructs like this. So
Yeah.
I think one thing that I'll add is like what I am desperately waiting for, and I think that's where Unacademy is doing some interesting work through like Relevel
Yeah.
and the likes, is how are you rethinking what the ROI quote unquote on schooling needs to be, and who is creating an ecosystem where the ROI is not only measured by what college did you get into, what was your SAT score or whatever else score, because as long as that is a metric of success, you will see platforms like this continue to exist and reproduce themselves. But it's disruption of curriculum that
You mentioned
I hope someone
Unacademy.
picks up.
One of the things he said in that talk was interesting, where he said what they want to do is make degrees irrelevant, which I think is an
Yeah,
interesting thing to take from what he said. And I think that's important because they are irrelevant in many cases. You just need to learn specific things and go do what you want to do. So
look at you and
this
me,
can become,
totally
yeah.
unqualified to
I did
host
I
a
did my 4 year
podcast.
engineering in 6 years. I'm a mechanical engineer. You guys take me near anything mechanical and I will destroy it because I was terrible at it. But yes, this can become a long
Yes.
rant if we don't make this is not a short segment anymore. So we will move on to the next one. What else are you digging into?
So actually, I love this article, which I read in Cap Table. It's on Better Capital and more largely speaking the
One more
new age
newsletter to
VC.
subscribe to people. Please subscribe to CapTable. Very nice.
Yes, very nice. And no Rohit Shetty happening in Cap Table CC, last episode that we did, where Varun cracked his epic joke. But
I'm
in
gonna
any
get
case,
something for that.
so Better Capital, and listeners, I think one thing that I'm excited about is newer forms of early stage investments coming in, because you obviously see a lot of your larger funds go into early stage. You're seeing Sequoia with Surge, you're seeing Bloom do a lot of early stage investment. You saw Axel launch Atoms. But outside of just these large funds, sort of going into early stage, I think what's really interesting that's happening now is new types of capital being made available to founders. So, for example, when we guys were raising our first round, right, which was our seed round of a little over a crore, it's a pain in the ass to find enough angels to
Yeah.
come into your round, and then it's a pain in the ass to manage all of those angels and get them on the same page. So Better Capital, which basically started out as a syndicate, they have recently raised a fund of about $15 million, which will be invested in as growth capital. It's run by this gentleman called Vaibhav Dom Kundwar, if I got the pronunciation correct. They have been on a investing spree. Their overall portfolio has about 185 startups. This year itself they've made 75 seed investments. They got their first unicorn, which was Slice, and they've got about four companies in their portfolio that are valued at over 500 million, six that are valued at over 100 million. But really the role that Vaibhav plays, right, and the role that and syndicates again is becoming increasingly popular in India. You obviously had Let's Venture do it, back in the day. You've had, and of course you've had AngelList, which launched in India a couple of years ago, consolidate how syndicates are run through. But basically,
Yeah.
the way a syndicate works is, for example, Varun, if you are running a syndicate, right? You are the one who is quote unquote responsible for finding deals. So you do the deal, you do the pipeline creation, sussing out founders. You basically take these deals to quote unquote partners that are in your quote unquote syndicate. So you
Yeah.
basically take it to 10 of your friends and you say, hey, this company is good, I'm putting in 5 lakhs, the total round size is going to be about a crore. We should all sort of like come together and invest in this, and essentially you also set the terms for the deal, right? So an ecosystem like this is actually very founder friendly, because as a founder I just have to sort of work with you, and on the back end of it, right, like on the syndicate lead to people within the syndicate, it operates very similar to, think of it as small case, right, where you've got like
Mm.
your you've got like the one guy who you trust, who sort of tells you what your
Yeah.
portfolio needs to kind of look like. So he's really taken this model and brought a lot of success to it. Obviously, it's not just him and syndicates as a investment vehicle in early stage, but you're also seeing a lot of super angels come up. So for example, Kunal Behel, through who's the CEO of Snapdeal, through his fund Titan Capital, they've made northward of 150 early stage investments. You've of course got Kunal Shah, who runs Cred. He is his name is popping up
Yeah.
in every other unique
He's on
fintech.
so many cap tables. It's not even funny.
No, but it's this, right? It's really interesting to see this, like new age investor almost being created. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of it sort of alludes to two things, right? One, how much fuck you money there is in the
Mm.
ecosystem at large. And I
Yeah.
think the second thing that it alludes to is how, even though there is a lot of money, people are looking for anchors or guides, so to speak, to help them channel
Yeah.
what money to put where and at what terms. What is your 2 cents on this ever changing world of early stage investments?
So I don't talk about as much, but I do angel invest quite a bit. About 10 plus investments in the last year and a half. So I understand this because yeah, and it's not like I'm putting massive amounts of money, right? But what I've realized really helps is that is people want a bunch of things. They obviously, there's large capital requirement which a lot of them have, and if you go to a larger VC, you're going to get a lot of things in there. But what's been interesting with this trend is that people also want a certain level of like, okay, who can you connect me to? So I've done a bunch of investments in the creator economy space, and every time there, it's more like, okay, because I know enough people, I invest, which means I'm able to connect the founder to 10, 15 other people for whatever they might need, right? From talent to a platform to anybody else, because I can always connect, I can join the dots for them. On the other end, what really everyone's looking for is, can you add to my, um, when you have a name which is kind of known, in many of these cases, people who are known to put money in good startups, when you go for your next round, people look at your table and say, okay, this person invested, so there is some credibility that comes automatically with that.
Signaling,
So
correct. Yeah.
that really helps as well. So oftentimes, even when I'm kind of looking at someone's deck, I'm saying, okay, I think this person kind of put in money. So also it becomes check mark in that sense. But there's a lot of this happening. A lot of AngelList stuff happening as well. A lot of individual deals. The number of syndicates out there now is insane. As you start to get into it, there's so many happening. But the only thing I would caution on is that an individual can only stretch themselves so far. So when you see someone who's done an excessive number of those, what you need to kind of ask yourself, if you are a startup, saying, okay, what kind of backend do they have? What kind of do they have a team that can help me beyond them? Because everybody has only a certain amount of time. So when it's an individual, that's where it gets tricky, where sometimes you might get the check, you might get the name, but you might not get the value. And I
Yeah.
think that's the core thing, right? All these guys who are doing it well are being able to do it because they've built a team who helps them do more. So they'll have a chief of staff or have someone kind of running that part of it. So even if they don't have time, someone's kind of helping out.
No, I think that's a super important point that you made over here, because managing, in the case of, for example, Better Capital, 185 investments is non-trivial, right? And also, especially for early stage founders, giving them the time, bandwidth, and access and information that they need is also non-trivial. So really, and I think that's where Kunal Behel's Titan,
Mm.
like Titan
Yeah.
VC, has done a super phenomenal job, because he's organized how he thinks about, obviously the money, at least from whatever I've read, for the most part is his, it's his family
Yeah.
office. But the infrastructure that you put in deploying this money, in doing those diligences, in providing companies with the feedback or the connects that they need to actually make a go of the money that you've given them, that's really where the kicker lies.
Yeah.
Totally with you over there.
Yeah, I also think it makes it faster for founders, right? You obviously go through a VC firm, go to a larger fund, takes so much more time to get the money in with like an individual or a smaller, like a micro VC. these deals happen very quickly. You will just meet someone this week, and within like a couple of days, sometimes it happens. If not a couple of weeks at max. I don't think weeks happen. It's mostly days.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when we guys had raised our first round, we were lucky enough to have Rajan Anandan as one of our seed investors, which basically led to this like unlocking of everyone
Exactly right.
wanting
Yeah.
to jump on the board. But I remember, despite even though we had him, and he's added so much value to the way we've built LBB up. I think one big pain in the ass for me was just managing the whole process, right? Because having someone who's well known, like for example in your case maybe you with respect to your friends, right? Having
Mm.
someone put their money in, but having someone create the right terms for the deal
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
two different problem
So
statements.
important.
Yeah, and I think aligning yourself with the right syndicate leader, so to speak, who can create terms that are founder friendly, help you negotiate those terms with the rest of everyone else, is what really makes a difference. But
Before
before
we yap on
we
more about this, we can't keep our guests waiting any longer.
Sorry. Hi, guest. Hi, guest. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a guest on the other side of this segment. We are massive. Varun, are you excited? Wow, we're growing up.
I'm
We
super
have like
excited. We have a
experts
guest.
coming on our
We
show.
have a guest coming. Finally, not
Wow.
just us yapping and claiming to be experts. We have an actual expert. But that's
Yes.
after
Is
the
it
break.
Cinderella? Cinderella. Can you intro our guest
Artist
by
in the
singing Cinderella or whatever the
no,
hell
no,
that
I don't
stupid
think
song is?
that. I'm not going to do
The
that.
guest will
I
run
don't know.
away. The
Exactly. Yeah.
guest will run
So
away.
after this break.
Awesome. So, guys, we finally have an expert. I'm sure you guys are done listening to Varun and me yap on and on about anything and everything. So, we decided to put a sellotape on both Varun and me today and bring on board an expert. And our very first expert on Think Fast is none other than Meeta Malhotra, who, for those of you who are living under a rock, runs this excellent newsletter come a website called the Hard Copy, which is essentially a one-stop shop to all things that you want to know about consumer brands. And she's obviously been in this space for very long, has spoken to a lot of founders. So we're super, super pumped to have you on board. Thank you for joining us, Meeta.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's really fun
So
to
I
be
have my
here.
notepad out. I have my notepad out to take lots of notes, and I'm super excited. So I'm just adding in here the
Thank
terms of the
you,
excitement.
guys. I know, and I know you said expert, Suchita, but I'm just going to caveat that and say, listen, I'm going to share my experiences. I'm like, this expert thing worries me. Whatever I've learned and seen in my very long journey, happy to share that with all your listeners.
that's what we're here for. So I want to kick off with, there's so much action that's happened in consumer brands this year. We've seen, shit ton of unicorns come out. There's a massive amount of investment that's finally started going into consumer brands. There's also been multiple, Thrasios that have been birthed, over the past year. So if you had to reflect on 2021, what's been of note and how do you really see the coming year play out?
So I think it's been a long time coming. All investment has been, all investors have been obsessed with tech. And I think we're finally at a stage where consumer brands can say we're a consumer brand and not disguise themselves as a tech company, because there was, for a very long time, if you wanted investment, that's all you needed to do. So I think that it's been a long time coming, super excited because India needs many more brands than we've had. So I think this is really great for consumers, great for brand builders. And the money part of it, it's when we talk about obscene valuations or we talk about this sort of tap that's been opened, look, that's the VC model. It doesn't matter whether it's consumer brands or whether it's tech or whether it was the dot-com boom or neobanks last year. That is how venture capital funds. So we will always see that when there is a hot space. A few will survive and thrive and achieve scale, and many will sort of stay by the wayside, and that is the model. So seeing this last year, very pleased that consumer brands are finally being recognized for what they are, and I think we're going to see some really interesting stuff being built across categories.
So obviously one model that has, finally sort of gotten its acknowledgement of sorts, not just in India, but even globally, has been this house of brands slash, Thrasio, heyday-esque sort of concept. What's your take on that? And both, right? Platforms like Mensa, 10 Club, etc. launching, but also consumer brands that are raising a lot of money like MyGlam and become these powerhouse acquirers of other brands. So what's your take on that?
So I think it's a sound model. Honestly, I know this may be controversial, and I know a lot of people feel otherwise. But house of brands is not a new thing. It's existed forever, right? And Unilevers and P&Gs have been around for decades. Now, if you just let's just step back. Let's just step back and look at how a brand is built. So, what are the three or four really big things, right? One is the whole manufacturing supply chain aspect. One is the whole marketing distribution aspect, and then of course, there is the people piece, all of these, and then finally the big elephant in the room is the distribution piece. Now all of these presented huge obstacles to young brands before the internet really came into its own. You couldn't, even if you had the best idea in the world and you put together the best product in the world, cracking offline distribution is not for the faint hearted. It requires very deep pockets, and it's a very, very tough thing to do, and there just wasn't enough capital available to even fund people who were attempting to do it. What's happening now is that all the pieces are falling into place. The internet is allowing you to launch your brand, experiment with it, reach your initial set of customers. I talk to entrepreneurs every other day who very quickly, within a year or two, have got to a 5 crore plus annual turnover. And they're hitting them, then they're going from 5 to 10. It's after that the trouble starts, right? Because then what happens often is that you need to hire people who know how to take you to that next leg of your journey, and that's where they're hitting sort of this wall. I think that the Thrasios will solve for, the Thrasio lookalikes will solve for each of these things. And when whoever does that successfully is going to create a successful house of brands. So we have to wait to see how many of them will do it successfully. And I'm not commenting again on, what are the financial aspects of it? How much money have they raised? Yes, there's a fight in the market for valuable brands. What price are they going to acquire them at? All of those things are going to determine whether 5 years down the line, if you invite me back on this podcast, we're talking about, okay, who succeeded and who didn't, right? But as a model, saying that very quickly in a market that is benefit of brands, we will acquire promising brands and give them the inputs that they need to scale is a fundamentally sound one. It not just the Thrasio kind of companies, but like you said, larger companies are doing it. Unilevers and P&Gs have done it for decades because it's quicker, it's faster. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to double tap on that, when you think of like moats specifically within each of these, Thrasio lookalikes, right? Do you see this over time becoming, Mensa sort of sticks to fashion and doubles down on expertise over there versus someone else, sticks to beauty or FMCG and doubles down over there? Because even building infrastructure for each of these categories is not the same. So do you see these guys really, picking up like a lane and sticking to it? Or, are there underlying expertise that you feel can be leveraged even across multiple different categories if that's a strategy that one of them takes?
I think we'll see both kinds of models playing out. I think that we'll see players who, in the next couple of years see that, look, it's just taking too much capital, sticking to perhaps a lane, sticking to a beauty or sticking to a fashion. But I think the larger players, and I can't claim to know what Mensa is doing, but a player like Mensa, which is so well funded, and has that expertise, could very well go start with something they're very familiar with, like fashion, because after all, Anand built Roadster and has that experience under his belt. There's nothing to stop them from going into, say, adjacent categories quite quickly, like from fashion to beauty.
Yeah,
that's not such a difficult thing to do.
Got it. Varun, you had a question.
Yeah. So I want to I have a question. I actually had a question prepared, but I have something as a follow up to something you just said. Now, as the number of brands increases and all this is happening, uh, it also gets trickier to how do you not get lost in the sea of brands, right? Because now there's so many D2C brands out there. There's so many newer brands kind of coming out, and obviously now the house of brands thing happening again. You're talking about it's just like the volume has increased. Um, what have you kind of seen that's making certain brands kind of stand out and others kind of just being part of the whole? I think that will be a good one for people to kind of get into.
Yeah, that's. I think that let's double tap on this D2C brands
Mm,
first, and this
mm,
is one of my pet peeves. So D2C brands, especially the younger ones, they focus. They're very very good because they have an immediate connect with their audiences, right? Many of the stories we hear of entrepreneurs, their brands have been born because of a personal pain point. So I didn't
mm,
find like a great mixer, I started one. I didn't find great athleisure, so I started this.
mm,
And so that means they have a very deep understanding, better than the bigger companies, of their immediate, excuse me, audience. But where they fail, sorry, where they fail is execution, the back end, right? And I've said this again and again and again. I see a lot of, I don't have data for this, but you'll you'll discover a D2C brand maybe on Instagram, or your friend will tell you or something else, and then you will go order them on Amazon.
mm,
That is because you don't trust their execution. And even when I've tried, I personally sort of always say no, I want to order on their own website. They just haven't put in the thought that's needed into just that fulfillment. And that's where they break down first of all. So the fourth, three or four things I talked about, that doesn't change, Varun. That stays the same no matter whether you built brands 20 years ago, whether you're building brands today. You've got to crack each one of those. So you
mm.
can't just focus on your pretty packaging and your activist outlook, and all of those are great for initial growth, but if you're not going to deliver and you're not going to fulfill, it's going to peter out very fast. So that's one big moat. People who build execution capabilities really fast, that is going to be a moat that a lot of younger brands will find hard to breach, which is why I'm bullish on the Thrasio-like models.
Which I think is an
And the
interesting
other
point.
one,
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry. Go on. Go on. Go on.
no, so I was saying that the other thing, of course, is the time immemorial moat, right? If your
Mm,
customers love you, really, and
mm,
believe in what your promise is to them, that moat has proven hard for the biggest companies to breach. It's the buy versus acquire question. Why does a Unilever, with all the expertise in the world, all the resources in the world, they can hire anyone? Why do they need to buy? They need to buy because they know that they are unsure of replicating that bond between the brand and the customer. That magic, there is no real formula for that.
Can you
yeah.
give examples of brands that have done a really good job of this?
Mm,
So
yeah.
examples of, brands that have built that customer bond and have really been community first?
I think people who've taken a very strong stance, one of the mistakes that again younger brands do is they tend to be safe and generic. It's going to be very
Mm,
hard to get attention. Like you said, there are just too many brands out there. So I would say a whole truth food, right?
mm, yeah.
Now Shashank took such a strong stance, and that got attention. So
Yeah. And
you're
he lives
able
it
to.
entirely. Yeah.
He lives it entirely, and his customers believe that this is true and what he's talking about, and it's way beyond buy my product, which is sort of the best way to build a brand. You're not just pushing product, you're actually talking about a much bigger thing, and you're getting your customers to buy into that vision with you, and you're making them understand how that vision is important in their lives. So of course, he's from Unilever. He knows how to play the game. But yeah, to me, he stands out. And then, of course, you have Sugar, that has done a brilliant job again of understanding their audience, really figuring out that there's this whole section of women who didn't want who weren't being addressed by Lakme, were not the Mac/Clinique spenders. So
Mm,
nobody was really talking to them. And who were these people? And then again, building that sharp personality of saying fearless, opinionated women, willing to experiment, and then sticking to it. I saw their offline campaign recently, and it said makeup that lasts, I think something like that, for the bold and fearless or something. And I was so happy because they're just staying with that. They're not deviating. And when they do that, they're building a very strong connection with their customers.
I think also the interesting part about what you just said, right, is the fact that when we look, you've seen a lot of these younger brands kind of come in, just focus on performance, kind of let's get as much sales in, and eventually at some point try to build a brand. But what you're saying, I think makes total sense that you need to think of that from day one. You need to kind of live it from day one and not kind of slap it on, let's say, after you raise your Series A, which seems to be the trend in many cases.
God, again, pet peeve. I'll tell you, I can go on for so long on this because, and I really blame, I blame the investors also, right? Because see, there's so much jargon in our industry, growth hacks, and God knows what all. Brand is equated to advertising, and everybody says that, oh, you don't need to build a brand yet. You just show some growth so you can get your Series A. That's the formula. And that's completely wrong. So let me give you a very concrete example. In the last week, I think 2 young entrepreneurs called me, and this is what I do. I love speaking to the people like that, and they both hit at 2 different segments. One was beauty, one was food, and they both hit a 7 crore annual turnover, which is remarkable just by themselves, bootstrapped with friends and family, say whatever, and they said, we don't have a brand. Now we don't know what to do. Now we are, tell us what should we do. And I said, first of all, that statement is incorrect. If you have customers, you obviously do, who are giving you 7 crores of rupees a year, you have a brand. They think something of you. Now that may not be what you want them to think of you. They may think of you as, oh, this is cheaper to the brand that I've been buying, so let me switch to them. They may think, I don't know, it's available online, so let me buy. So maybe they don't have the bond that you want, but you have a brand. Now your job is to figure out what they think of you and shape that narrative to a desired place. And that's not going to be only through saying, Acha, should I launch a TV ad? There's this misconception. I can't build a brand because I don't have a budget to, sponsor an IPL team or launch a TV ad.
Yeah.
So just so much confusion and this overemphasis on performance marketing, which has its place. But, even if you're doing performance marketing, you're brand building,
Yeah,
aren't you?
Yeah, so true.
How are you not?
absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. I want to segue into categories, right? Because this year, in between like My Glam, Sugar, Mama Earth, and, acquisitions that they've all made, Dot and Key getting, quite Nykaa's obviously ginormous IPO. Beauty has been this like, like the hot property of 2021, right? What would you, put your money on in the upcoming year? What are those, undisrupted categories where you see more interesting brands being formed?
So I wouldn't put my money on a single category. I think beauty will continue to grow. But the way I look at it is, look, you've got that holy trifecta of fashion, beauty, and food, right? That is going to continue to grow. What I'm looking out for, which hasn't happened in India so far, and maybe with now all these, Thrasio, well-funded Thrasio-like companies may happen, is what were essentially considered commodities, can they be made into brands, like unsexy boring things, and people have done it and built the best companies in India out of it. So Asian Paints is a great example of somebody who took what was essentially a commodity, paint, and attached a whole lifestyle to it and said it's about the pride in your house, and look
Home
at
is
how
where the heart
successful a
is, and all
company
of
they
that.
have built. Yeah, all of that. And then there's Titan, which their whole philosophy has been enter an unorganized sector and organize it. So now it seems self-evident, oh, Tanishq is such a big brand, but actually they've done it very mindfully. There was only a family jeweler, and then they went in and organized that sector and started this idea of branded jewelry, which everybody has followed. So I'm really, more than thinking about which category, I'm looking to see who's going to, there's so many unorganized sectors in India, who's entering those and starting to brand them. And I think that's going to be a really exciting play.
And if I had to double tap on that, right, because that here is where branding commodities becomes fairly tough because, again, of the nature of even distribution engines are broken, right? So
Yeah.
if you had to sort of, give first principle ways of approaching how do you brand a commodity, how do you create character, when you're selling basically like a wall, what are the things that entrepreneurs listening in can lean on?
I know this is a boring thing to say, but my first and even maybe last piece of advice is listen to your customers. So, you know, let's take an example of, say, P Safe. Somebody, I don't know what the parent company is called, but, he took what was essentially available, but then branded it for a very specific consumer pain point. Hey, when I'm traveling, I'm not sure how hygienic the toilet is. It wasn't as if that commodity was not available earlier, but it wasn't branded and packaged to address a specific customer need. So I think that's what I would say. And whenever somebody asks me this, I think a lot of entrepreneurs get really annoyed with me because I just say, you know what, go talk to 10 of your customers, you'll have your answer. And that is what I would say. Whatever you're doing, and if you're stuck, first of all, figure out where you're stuck. What is that question that you need to answer? And then really just go out and have informal chats with 10 or 15 of your customers. You will see the light. And that light could be, I don't want to listen to them, or it could be that, hey, one of them has given me my answer. But either way, the solution will lie with the customer.
So speak with your customers. Varun, you had a question
Yeah.
about creators.
Yeah. You used the term pet peeve a couple of times. My biggest pet peeve in life is to connect everything to the creator economy. And we've seen that happen. We've seen consumer brands come out of creators in other markets. In India, still hasn't. They haven't gone beyond merchandise, etc. Do you see that as an area that can kind of grow because there is interest? I know a bunch of them are working in stealth on this right now, but just because we only had celebrities do this so far, we haven't had so-called internet creators kind of do this as well. Are you seeing that as an area that can kind of grow?
I think it will take a little bit of time, Varun. So, India has been very much a Bollywood market, and that is going to be very hard to change that. So, even the initial success we've seen, whether it's in fashion by Salman Khan and Hrithik Roshan, or whether it's, like Suchita said, it's Katrina and Alia with beauty, we're still seeing it come out of Bollywood, right? Because
Hmm.
there's this trust and belief in Bollywood that is very hard to rationalize in India, but it is there and it's very hard to take away. Now, will an internet creator, regardless of how many followers he or she has, be able to inspire that same kind of trust? Where I will go buy a product, I don't have an answer to that yet, and I think it will take some time because there is a delta between me watching an internet creator, enjoying what they do, being their follower, versus buying a product which may not be directly linked to their entertainers or musicians, or if it's a product that's not directly linked to what they do, it's going to take some convincing.
When you say that, I kind
But
of
I
think
think where
about.
internet creators, yeah,
Yeah. No, I was just saying that
I
from what
think
I'm
where they
seeing
would
with
have an
a lot of them.
advantage, of course, is sorry.
Sorry. I know you're overlapping. I'm going to let you finish, and then I'm going to come in.
Oh God, sorry.
Go
Yeah,
for it. Go for
sorry.
it.
I was just going to say where internet creators will have an advantage, of course, is distribution, right? So that's like a big advantage that they'll be able to get the distribution up and running much faster than, say, normal brands.
Uh, the interesting part of how a lot of them are looking at it, and whoever I've spoken to in recent times, and that I thought, and just it's a different way from how other consumer brands do it, is that they all look at it as small batch drops. They're not looking at it as, okay, I'll go deep, create like massive volume. I will do a product. I will do a certain limited amount of it and sell it. I don't know how that is scalable, but and is there something from this that, let's say, larger consumer brands could kind of borrow and say, okay, let's do a small batch or do like a exclusive range. Do you see that there's a learning for each of them with each other?
I think so. So if that's how they're looking at it, then that model makes perfect sense, right? Because then I am buying that drop, that limited edition drop, and this is a proven model. I think creators in the West have been doing this for a very long time. Then I'm buying that because it's because of my relationship with that creator. It's not because that I want to buy a face cream, or I want to buy a pair of sneakers, or I want to buy a pair of headphones. I'm doing it because I love this creator and he or she is offering me this, and I'm just going to do it as part of my relationship with them. So limited drops makes perfect sense. I think that what we'll see as this catches on is that certainly larger companies will seek collabs. I mean, that's going to happen for sure. And they will do it because they will want to reach those audiences, and they will want, some rub off from that brand association. So, I mean, you've got a Balenciaga and Fortnite. 5 years ago, somebody would have said nonsense. Like, that's just,
Yeah.
you're talking rubbish. People I know in the traditional international fashion industry, I mean, that industry is more old fashioned and rigid than anyone, right? But today it's happening, and we'll see more of it happening, because there is this fear that things are moving so fast now that people don't want to be left behind.
I want to sort of, switch into moats that you've seen come up, because I think what's interesting is every category is so different, right? You had Epigamia really build their moat, with respect to cold chain, right? You've had Licious that's been able to crack
Yeah.
something that similar to, how you're describing Titan, right? Take a commodity, but really standardize the experience for a customer. But each of
Yeah.
these categories has a very different MO, right? They have a very different sort of infrastructure layer that's needed to actually build and grow. And unfortunately, or for better or for worse, you're seeing a lot of younger brands lean on, just having Instagram community as a moat, while there's actually so much more that can be explored, whether it's in infra, distribution,
Exactly.
supply chain, whatever else. What are the interesting moats that you've seen being built out, maybe by some of the younger, more emerging brands that you've interacted with? And for young entrepreneurs who are looking at launching stuff within the consumer brand space, what are the things that you're still seeing not being leveraged enough by entrepreneurs?
I think supply chain is, if you can get that, it's easy. Look, that is a huge moat. Supply chain is possibly one of the biggest moats you can have, and it's getting easier. I think even in food, the reason these brands have been able to come up is because, say, cold chain. 10 years ago, it was impossible. It was just too expensive. But today, it is possible to start thinking about launching an ice cream. You could. Whereas earlier, I mean, forget it. No one could launch an ice cream. So I think that in that sense, those moats have become slightly diluted. That people can get in. At least they can breach the category. They can enter the category. To me, the single thing that I see as a problem, and I really admire specifically, say, Mama Earth or Sugar, who would you say in food, maybe an Epigamia, who have scaled. The problem lies in going from being this wonderful product loved by your Instagram community to really being available across India, because ultimately that's what you need to do, being where the customer is. Despite all the hype, let's not forget what percentage of our retail is online. 10, 11%. I mean,
Yeah,
everybody
negligible.
else is still shopping offline. So if you're, yeah, it's negligible. So don't get carried away with that. Use it to build and experiment and understand, but always know that if you're ambitious, see, I mean, it depends on the scale of your ambition. It's perfectly fine to build a lifestyle brand online and stay there. But if you want to build a large brand, you have no choice but to go offline. And I remember speaking to Neeraj, of Paper Boat, and he told me that for the longest time, his father would say, "I don't know what you're doing," and whatever, because I think the father stayed in Kanpur, and next in the Kirana shop close to their house, Paper Boat was not available. So he was like, "If you're not available here, then what kind of brand are you building?" And that's the
Hmm.
truth. That is really the truth of India. You have to crack that distribution. So it's too early to. I mean, Licious, all of these guys have done a fantastic job cracking supply chain. I think that's an amazing moat. Um, like I said, there are consumer moats being built, like Whole Truth has done, like the beauty brands have done. But finally, what scale will all of these guys achieve offline? I think the next 3 years will really tell us that. I think a few have got escape velocity, like a Mama Earth. I mean, a Wow, if you've crossed your 500 crore mark and you're available offline, you've already done a lot of the hard work is behind you. How many will reach that mark? We still have to see.
If you had to make predictions, right, for what the future holds, and if we, and if we were magically able to produce $100 million to you and ask you to
My pen
invest
is
that
out
either in
already.
Oh,
and invest that in either brands, categories, or even entrepreneurs, right? Where does Meeta's buck lie? Like, what would you bet on?
I would bet on the really more boring categories, like
Bed sheets
I
and the
loved,
likes.
like Go Colors. To
Yeah.
me, that was always a winning. Every time I saw them, I think, even a few years ago before they became so well known, I would see them and I would think, oh my God, this is amazing. What a fantastic idea. So I would bet on all those unsexy categories, which seem like just commodities, which people today buy largely from unbranded sources. And I would go in there and really create an interesting brand, a simple brand. It doesn't have to be hyped. Like, I think Go Colors is an amazing brand. They
Yeah.
cracked it with offline distribution. They are everywhere you go. They are priced sensibly, and yet they are something that every Indian woman wants. So
Yeah.
doesn't get better than that. That's where I would go.
And also like genius in terms of how they, like you said, thought of distribution, right? I remember when I was talking to Sakshi from Sequoia, she mentioned that they literally opened next to one of these like hot kurti selling like your global desis, etc. of the world, because you need to pair that kurti or that tunic that you're buying with Go Colors, and it's just that simple. It's just thinking through the use case for the customer and plugging yourself in there. That's where that delta came from.
Exactly. Exactly. And like
Varun
you
ji.
said, finally it's
I
about the
need to I
customer.
need to
You
upgrade
figured
my
out.
Go Colors
Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah, Varun needs to start wearing
You
colored
should.
tights.
Listen, if you're
I have
traveling,
to.
look for them.
I'm going to
Yeah.
update my.
So that I think
I
there would be so many opportunities for Go Color like brands in India. There would just be so many. And keep it simple. People get so carried away with the hype. Do what they've done, just good solid business sense.
and just kind of like get a perspective from about categories, like even like something like beauty, which has been over indexed. That's how much there already is over there. What's within the stuff which we already see a lot of, which people aren't looking at, which is like a great opportunity. I'd love to get from you saying, because there are pieces over there which, while it seems crowded, there's so many gaps.
Varun is looking for business ideas, Meeta.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's why I'm digging for
Yeah.
business
I
ideas for you.
know. Gosh, if I had the 100 million and the business ideas, then I would be on Shark Tank and not on Think
Yeah.
Fast. I think, yeah, that's another great thing that's happening, huh? I'm so
Yeah,
happy
yeah.
that they're finally doing a sensible thing which makes sense for India. Like I'm
With
just
the right set of
praying that it
people.
becomes ABC like, because
Yeah,
that's what we need. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so in beauty, go back to your question, what categories? I don't know what specifically in beauty, really, I can't think of a category, but something that I'm kind of bullish on is this intersection of beauty and health, which is
Hmm.
like this whole nutraceutical. We don't have enough of that in India. Very few, hardly any. And now with this whole, like we're seeing this whole health wave emerge,
Yeah.
and I think that there's a play.
The number of gummies I see on my Amazon feed. In full disclosure, I am having two random gummies a day because I like testing these things out. I have bought. Um,
आपके घने बालों
no,
का राज, वरुण.
no, yeah, technically yes. One biotin gummy for the hair, one gummy which is an apple cider one, and I have found these weird strips you can put on your tongue, and they melt in, which give you everything from vitamin C to everything else, which feel oddly connected to some ways to infuse drugs, which I've heard about. I never really have gone near. I'm just like putting it out there, but
Are you
seems to be
eating
Mhm.
inspired
magic
from.
pops? Are you basically telling
No,
us that you've been consuming a lot of magic pops?
I've been told they're
Varun is
healthy, so I'm
stealing
just doing
his
all of that.
daughter's sweet loot.
No, that is
Basically,
separate.
that's what's happening
I have
here.
a candy
We
stash
used to
room
do that, yeah.
cabinet.
We used to do that. We used to wait for the kids to come home from birthday parties and then wait for them to go to sleep. and then
And
kind of
then have their magic pops.
But gummies are the new candy. They taste like candy, and they're supposed to be healthy. What's that's going to be my category to look at.
Okay,
You
guys, we
have
yeah.
know
it,
what Varun's going to launch. Meeta, wait for it. He's going
gummies,
to launch a nutraceutical magic pop
gummy bear.
gummy thingamajig. Yeah, and brand
Yes,
it with your hair, Varun. Brand it with your hair.
yes, yes. This is my
Varun, I'm
my newly
investing. So please call me when.
done, done.
No, but thank you so much, Meeta. This was absolutely awesome. I know we've all taken a bunch of notes, and I absolutely love what you said about going back to solving the simple, boring problems. But that's really where like the delta of opportunities lie. And if you look at any of the successful examples, yeah, they're cool brands, but what they've really done is solve the simple shit. And that's where the magics come from.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, that's what will endure, Suchita. And I know a lot of people don't
To
want to hear
endurance.
the truth. Yes, to endurance. Here's to endurance,
Yes,
and here's to a million Indian brands being built. I'm so
and
happy to see
gummies.
it
Absolutely.
happen finally,
Absolutely. Thank you so much for
and
joining
lots
us,
of love.
Meeta. Listeners,
Thank
make sure
you.
you check out the hard copy and subscribe to it. It's absolutely awesome. Varun and I get all of our consumer brand dope from there. So thank
Yes.
you so much, Meeta, for doing what you do, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, thanks.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Suchita. Thanks, Varun.
Okay, that was. I felt like I learned so much. I know that we claim to be experts, but that was an actual expert, and I learned a lot. We're going to be doing a lot of gummy. My gummy theory will survive. I'm telling you, gummies will take over everything.
Or magic pops, as
Magic
what you
pops,
will
I love
actually
it.
magic
Okay, one sec.
pops.
Speaking of magic pops, I forget what the thing was. You should get that candy which you put in your mouth and you start like pat patawing inside.
That's
It's pat
magic
patawing
pops,
inside.
mere bhai.
Correct. That's magic. Oh yeah.
Oh my
I'm
god.
getting old.
Okay.
I'm getting old. This episode is about
Uh,
how I've gotten old.
Basically, we should title this episode Papa Ji Varun.
Yes. So before I make any more old person things, what are your recommendations for this week?
So, I have been like de-stressing from a long week at work by watching this absolutely excellent show. Mindy Kaling is back, and how she has a new show called Sex Lives of College Girls. And basically, like, think of it as a 2021 version of that HBO show Girls, or like Sex in the
Mm-hmm.
City,
Mm-hmm.
except in the context of college girls. So you've got an Indian girl, you've got like this, Midwestern girl, you've got this closeted, LGBTQI, character on the show, and it's just it's such a fun, relevant, new age version of. Of these old school shows like Girls, Sex and the City, and the likes. And I think the other thing that I want to add is it's so lovely to see someone also set the narratives for what is right or wrong in the college context. I didn't go to an American university, but
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah,
from
that right.
friends who went to like the Whartons or the whatever else is of the world, you hear great stuff, but you also hear horror stories of what really goes down in college and what was considered acceptable and unacceptable back in the day. So I think Mindy Kaling does a vataj job of really setting the ground rules of what women should look at as acceptable and unacceptable in the college context. I will not tell you the source of how I saw this show, but
Mm.
ladies and gents, if you can find your way to this show,
Yes.
must watch. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful show.
I'm actually
What's yours,
watching
Varun?
two things from very parallel lens. I just I came across this documentary on the first ever smartphone that was made, which is not the iPhone, none of those things, right?
Is it
It's this, it
Fairphone
was this
one?
company called Handspring. And there's a half an hour documentary. The Verge made it. It's on YouTube, so just go to the Verge channel on YouTube. It's called, the company was called Handspring, and a lot of the stuff which you associate with the modern smartphone was something they did. They were just like before their time. A lot of stuff just was done wrong in that sense. But it's a great to see what it was. Like they talked about like there'll be data coming into our phones and we'll be connected to the internet and all that stuff way before even Steve Jobs did that. That iconic keynote. So that's a good one to check out. And I'm also watching Hawkeye. Which is the next Marvel series out on Disney Plus. It's amazing. It's great. It's like having a Christmas movie version of a Marvel series, which is the perfect combination of things. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of good time
Uh,
pass fun. So yes, that's what it's very parallel things I'm consuming. But Fun
Yeah,
stuff.
but I know my homework. I need to watch Andaz, Apna Apna, and Bahubali
Yes.
this weekend.
No, actually, instead of watching Bahubali, watch the documentary. It's great.
What is it called again?
It's called it's on there's the Verge, which is the publication. Then it's on the
Right.
YouTube channel.
Uh-huh.
It's a documentary that's basically it's the secret history of the first real smartphone. The company was called Handspring.
Nice, nice, nice. Interesting. And with
I
those
need to come.
recommendations, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to a conclusion of episode
Yes.
03. Think fast.
Yes. Think fast.
Good job,
Think
Varun.
fast,
We
bole.
actually
I
thought
I will not
fast.
do the Bacha line again. I'm just going to like think fast. I'll do this how we started off this episode saying think fast, guys. This is a think fast episode. Think fast. Gotta think slow now. Go to sleep.
Bye,
It's almost end of 2021. Okay, bye.
See you next week.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
Bye, guys.
IVM.